And for more on the UK's Iraq War investigative report, we are joined in the studio by Mr. Zhu Chenghu, who is a Chinese military expert, retired from the PLA National Defense University. General Zhu, help us to understand this. Of course, in the report, there's no smoking gun. In other words, nothing really shocked us. But when you look at it in retrospect, what do you make of the UK's build-up to the war in Iraq together with the United States?
I think I'm very glad that people in UK is now rethinking of the war. And I believe that why the UK was involved with this war is that UK was not independent enough. It followed the United States. And actually, if you look, I do hope that the Westerners will rethink about their policies and different wars, like the war in Iraq, like the war against Libya, and other wars. So this sort of wars have brought so many killing and disasters to the people in the locality. And I hope that the United States and the other Western powers should not use their military power to top the regimes in other countries. You should respect the choice of the people of different countries.
General Zhu, because you are coming from the military, so may I also put forward a question related to that? One of the things being mentioned by the Chilcot report is the so-called can-do spirit of the British military before it goes to the war with the United States in Iraq. And of course, when you look at it now, it was not necessarily should be a spirit that can be encouraged. And people wonder whether it's just in the UK or elsewhere as well when it comes to what the military's role should be and how much role military should play in the national policy decision.
I believe that the military should support the foreign policies of different countries, but these policies should be constructive instead of disruptive. So this is very important. I hope that the militaries of Western powers will play a role in promoting peace and stability and promoting development and prosperity in other countries, in other regions. This is very important.
Having said that, though, General Zhu, we see a series of events over the past few years, of course, including this Chilcot report. One is the referendum inside the UK about Brexit, which of course has stirred so much debate, not only before that, but also after it. And now we also see this Chilcot report, which suggested a lack of consultation and scrutiny in the policy-making process before going to the war in Iraq inside the UK. So many wonder, are there problems existing with the current state of democracy we're talking about, whether it's UK or the US or elsewhere?
Yeah, I think it's a problem. So don't try to believe that they practice the democratic systems and their decision-making is democratic enough. So these are two things. They are different things. So I do hope that the democratic societies can make democratic policies. This is very important. And also you will have to respect the choice of other countries. Don't try to enforce your systems and your will onto the others. So this, I think, should be avoided in the future.
General Zhu Chenghu, of course, stay with us. We are also having you as one of the panelists for our debate about another topic coming up. Thank you so much for being with us. We continue today's show with the Rim of the Pacific. The U.S. led the world's largest multinational maritime military exercise. This year's drill started on June the 30th, launched in 1971. RIMPAC is hosted by the U.S. Navy's Pacific Fleet. China first sent observers to the drill in the year 1998 and participated for the first time in year 2014. This year, China is the drill's third largest contingent. Meanwhile, China also started a routine week-long naval training in the South China Sea on Tuesday, ahead of the Hague's ruling on the apparent Philippines territorial dispute with China. Before we turn to cooperation and tension on the sea, let's take a look at RIMPAC.
The world's biggest naval exercise, the Rim of the Pacific. This year, 26 nations, 45 surface ships, 5 submarines, 200 aircraft, and 25,000 personnel are participating in the drill, which started on June 30th. China is participating for the second time, with a larger presence than its first foray in 2014. Among China's fleet are the missile destroyer Xi'an, the missile frigate Heng Shui, the supply ship Gaoyou Hu, a submarine rescue vessel Changdao, and the hospital ship Peace Ark. As the third largest national contingent in the exercises this year, China has also brought a marine and diving squad. In total, there are 1,200 Chinese officers, soldiers, and sailors participating.
During the tactical practice, both Chinese and the US fleets can accurately understand the instructions and rapidly locate at the predetermined spots. It shows that we have been communicating very well and understand the goal of the practice.
I congratulate you on a successful exercise.
However, the cooperation in RIMPAC is happening against a backdrop of tensions in the South China Sea. The U.S. has been increasing its military presence in these waters. 2 aircraft carriers and their accompanying ships and 3 destroyers have entered the region.
The rhetoric of a few people in the U.S. has become blatantly confrontational. How would you feel if you were Chinese and read in the newspaper or watch on TV reports and footages about U.S. aircraft carriers, naval ships, and fighter jets flexing muscles right at your doorstep, and hear a senior U.S. military official telling the troops to be ready to fight tonight?
On Tuesday, China began week-long military exercises in the South China Sea. The exercises are taking place in the waters around the Xisha Islands, also known as the Paracels Islands.
The training activity is the routine arrangement made in accordance with the annual training plan of the Navy. China will firmly maintain its sovereignty in the South China Sea and insist on solving the dispute with relevant countries through direct talk.
This drill will finish on July 11th. One day before the arbitration court in The Hague announces its decision on the South China Sea territorial dispute case initiated by the Philippines. But China has made clear that the arbitration result would not be the final word on the disputes in the South China Sea.
And for more on the RIMPAC drills, we are joined here in our Beijing studio 2 panelists. First of all, Mr. Zhang Junshe, Vice President of China Naval Research Institute, and of course, Mr. Zhu Chenghu, who stayed with us for this round as well, Chinese military expert retired from the PLA National Defense University. Welcome to both of you, gentlemen. Meanwhile, joining us from Washington, D.C., we're also having 2 guests. One is Kurt Volker, former U.S. Ambassador to NATO and now CEO of McCain Institute for International Leadership. Also joining us from Washington, Ms. Bonnie Glaser, Senior Advisor for Asia and also Director of the Chinese Power Project with the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Welcome to our program as well. First of all, may I begin by asking you, Mr. Zhang, about what China wants to achieve this time with RIMPAC. Started the end of June, lasting till the very beginning of August.
Well, this year, the Chinese PLA Navy have sent 5 ships to take part in the RIMPAC 2016 exercise, and they will take part in some items, including the maritime search and rescue, counter-piracy, gunnery operations, and also submarine salvage operations. And most of them fall in the scope of non-traditional security fields. I think through the participation, the Chinese Navy will promote mutual understanding between China and the United States, and also will enhance the cooperation in the future among the navies, including Chinese Navy and other navies.
Sounds very encouraging, but let's continue a little bit about that. General Zhu, what do you make of this year? Of course, this year compared to last time, 2014, there was already quite a number of development there. Why China wants to enlarge its participation, and why the U.S. is also willing from your perspective?
I believe that this sort of exercise will help the military of, especially the Navy of China, to enrich experience in promoting the cooperation with the counterparts from other countries, especially from the United States. Second, I believe that this sort of joint training or joint drills will help to increase, I hope, will help to increase trust between the 2 navies, because they are confronting in different areas, especially in South China Sea and East China Sea sometimes. So I hope this will help to resolve, not necessarily resolve, but to reduce their future tensions and competition or confrontation in this region.
General Zhu, I specifically noticed that when you say the possible result, you emphasize on I hope.
Yeah.
Those two words are extremely important. Ms. Glaser, what is your hope?
Well, I think that China's participation in RIMPAC is very positive. There's an increase in the number of activities and exercises that China is joining this year. Of course, they are conducted within the restrictions of the 2000 National Defense Authorization Act, which has 12 restrictions on U.S.-Chinese military cooperation. But this is very positive. I think that these kinds of opportunities for our navies to work together enhance to some degree our mutual trust, but more importantly, I think demonstrate the professionalism of our navies and enable the navies to practice the kinds of skills that they are learning separately, not just between the U.S. and China, but really all countries, which of course we could put into practice if there is some kind of challenge in, for example, natural disasters or counter-piracy activities.
Right. Ambassador Volker, what do you think? Of course, we all hope there will be some wonderful result, but during the process of inviting China to participate, there are different voices certainly coming from Washington, particularly from lawmakers, suggesting this is awarding China for having so-called territorial disputes. What do you think the U.S. can achieve this time, particularly the naval forces?
Well, there's always going to be a diversity of views in Washington. It's one of the beauties of democracy. That being said, I agree with your first speaker, actually, about the purposes of this. It is to improve the contacts and the connections between the navies, to improve the ability to communicate so that we are able to communicate under any circumstances in this exercise or afterwards, to increase predictability so we understand each other better and how each other will act. And certainly, I am convinced that on the side of neither the United States nor China is there a desire for our armed forces to be in any conflict. We do not want that. I'm sure China doesn't want that. At the same time, we do have differences that put our militaries in close proximity. So having these kind of exercises and contacts and building some cooperation can help deal with those situations that will arise over time.
Right. Those are all wonderful messages coming out of the two sides, but we have to take notice, Ms. Glaser, the fact that the Hague International Arbitration, the ruling of it is likely to come out on July the 12th. That falls into the scheduled time, at least, of the RIMPAC. And within the RIMPAC, there are different military, 26 countries, including China, the Philippines, and the United States. The two countries, China and the Philippines, of course, we know are the two countries that are in disputed issues of territory, and the U.S. has been sending its forces to the South China Sea, which China claims as its territory. So what I've been trying to say is there are critical countries that are involved in this conflict that are present at RIMPAC. What would that mean if the ruling comes out, if tensions being heightened?
Well, I certainly don't think it's going to have any impact on RIMPAC. These are exercises that take place every other year. As I said, very professionally, it's an effort to develop cooperation among militaries, between the navies. I don't think that the timing of them is in any way going to have an impact on the ruling or vice versa. Yes, China is exercising now in the South China Sea this week. And of course, prior to that, the United States had 2 aircraft carrier battle groups that were also exercising in the South China Sea. Much of this area is international waters. The fact that the ruling is going to come out on July 12th is, as you say, increasing tensions. But I do agree that there should be no conflict. Neither the United States or China wants to have a conflict in the South China Sea or any place else. And so I think that we shouldn't get too worked up over the fact that there are military exercises taking place. That's what navies do around the world. They exercise.
Right. General Zhu, what do you make of it? Of course, we don't want to be too worked up about anything or speculations, but that's what at least the international focus has been over the past few weeks. So what do you make of it? Can the militaries, despite the possibility of heightened tensions after July the 12th, be able to concentrate on the mission of getting to know one another better, of getting to know and therefore trying to figure out solutions to some of the problems we're facing right now? Can the militaries do that?
I believe that the militaries of different countries will have to follow the decisions of the government, especially
the political leaders.
Yeah, political wills and political decisions. These are very important. As far as the arbitration concerned, I think it all depends on what the Philippines will do. I think the ball is on the court of the Philippines. If the Philippines do not make any provocation, I don't think we Chinese will take any positive reactive action against the Philippines. So this is all dependent on the actions of the Philippines. So
continue about that argument a little bit. Many say here in China, over the past 100 years, China was forced to hand over some of its territories to Western powers, and now it is adopting a much tougher stand, as some see it, on territorial claims and maintaining peace. For example, earlier, Chinese former state councilor Dai Bingguo called for cooling the temperature in the South China Sea and said China cannot tolerate a war in the region. He also stressed that the South China Sea cannot be another West Asia or North Africa. I guess what he's trying to suggest is that it is not a decision of the country that should be made by the others. General Volker, of course, there are so many different trades of messages coming from all sides at this moment leading up to the July the 12th. China, no participation, no acceptance of the ruling. That's the precondition. Having said that, though, what would these political environments mean for RIMPAC itself, and particularly for the personnel participating in the RIMPAC and their determination for real and genuine exchanges with one another?
Well, as General Zhu and Ms. Glaser said, I don't think that the ruling is going to have any impact on the exercises, and the navies are going to take their cues from the political leadership. And there, the political leadership, I think, has given them clear instructions: run a proper naval exercise, work with each other, build those communications. The ruling will be coming down a different track. There will be political reactions to that. I don't believe there'll be any military reaction to that, as your guest said. Now, one thing I think is important to bring up, though, is that the fact that there is an arbitration court, the fact that the Philippines and China disagree on territorial claims is important. I'm not suggesting that this ruling will be the final word on all of this and there'll be no more differences of view. There will be, and there will be more discussion about it. But one of the things that we often hear from China is a very unequivocal claim that these islands, these waters are Chinese, and that's it. And that is not the way China's neighbors view these territories, these islands, these waters. It is a disputed area. And so hopefully, even while maintaining its position, China can recognize it's a dispute, and therefore to try to avoid provocative actions on its part, as we hope all parties avoid provocative actions.
All right. Mr. Zhang here in Beijing, first of all, your response to Ambassador Volker, and secondly, will militaries genuinely do their exchanges? Will these kinds of exchanges through RIMPAC necessarily going to bring the militaries closer with one another and bring the militaries closer to the understanding that the strategic goals of the militaries should be different from going to war with one another, but rather creating peace? Mr. Zhang, please respond first of all to Ambassador Volker.
Well, first I agree with my U.S. counterparts in that the ruling, the award of the arbitration will have no impact on the exercise because the ruling is actually a political decision. And I don't agree with him on the award, on the essence of the arbitration. The essence of the arbitration actually is the sovereignty over some maritime features in the South China Sea, which falls beyond the scope of UNCLOS. That means the tribunal has no jurisdiction over this case. And China has sufficient evidence that can prove China these islands and reefs in the South China Sea belong to China. Right. And the exercise will really promote mutual understanding among all the navies, because we know that most of the items Chinese Navy is taking part is in the non-traditional field. And this, for instance, piracy is a common enemy for all the countries. So in the future, I think when they meet with such kind of enemies or threats, they can cooperate more closely. And also, I think the interaction during the exercise between China and the United States will help the navies to reduce misunderstanding and miscalculations when they meet with on the high seas, or even on some occasions when close encounters happen, such as the event when the United States sent its warships to the South China Sea, and the Chinese warships follow and monitor the U.S. naval warships there. I think neither side wants a conflict.
All right, we are running out of time for this round of discussion, but certainly I know all of you have a lot to say about the prospect of RIMPAC and also the military exchanges between the two countries and many more. But for now, I have to bid goodbye to all of you. All the best to the RIMPAC, of course. Zhang Junshe, Zhu Chenghu here in Beijing, Kurt Volker, Bonnie Glaser in Washington, D.C. Really appreciate it for your input and insight. Thank you so much for being with us.